Hi everyone, I'm Steve Wiston. I'm joined by Kevin Harper, and this is the Saturday football betting podcast brought to you by All Sports Betting Pod. How are you doing, Kev, this week?
Not too bad, Steve. Still recovering from my midweek exertions, but apart from that, can't complain. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Of course, you had a midweek trip to the seaside, didn't you, up in Morecambe? A long way to go for a 0-0 draw, I must say, but nevertheless, a bit of sea air might have done you some good. Now, last weekend, generally we had some solid results, apart from my French selections, which were I couldn't pick my nose, could I, in that league, unfortunately, last week. But there's always this weekend to hopefully get back on track there. But we were pretty solid in every other department. So here's to a good weekend. Now, we're going to start in the Premier League. And the first match on show is Huddersfield against Spurs. Now, you've not got a pick for this particular game, Kev. But tell us your thoughts and opinions on how you see it going.
Yeah, I would have had a pick, Steve, but Tottenham are just a little bit too short, to be honest. Obviously, they were in Champions League duty in midweek, weren't they? Away from home as well. Never easy to back it up, particularly on a Saturday lunchtime. I would imagine Huddersfield's sort of ground is going to be packed, and they're going to be bang up for this one, aren't they? It's their big game, their last game for a fortnight because of the international break. And that said, I still think Spurs will win the game. But there's nothing there price-wise really that sort of lures me in.
It's going to be like a cup tie, isn't it? This one, you feel, for Huddersfield, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. And obviously, of course, it's an important game for Tottenham as well, isn't it? They don't want to drop points against a side who are more than likely still likely to get relegated this season. And also, of course, with their troubles at home, it's really important they pick up points away from home. They had a brilliant win at West Ham last week, didn't they? Okay, they were holding on towards the end, but they were more than good value for that win. Would have won it a lot easier had Aurier not have been a bit silly and got himself sent off. Generally, they're tight at the back. I don't think West Ham really had too much in the way of genuine chances until the sending-offs came, apart from the 2 goals. And, I'm not really sure that Huddersfield are going to offer too much going forward. I think Mounier's still out. That's a big blow. They don't really have an awful lot in behind him. Moy looks a decent enough player, but he seems to play quite deep. So don't really see anything from Huddersfield. I would imagine Tottenham have more than enough to break down this Huddersfield defence, but whether they're going to break it down regularly, you've got to give it some credit, haven't you? This Huddersfield defence, they're defending really well. Something like 4 clean sheets in their 6 games so far. That's fair enough. And with Tottenham's exertions in midweek, maybe 1 or 2 have got one eye on the England game on Thursday night as well. Just a game to leave alone, really.
If you had to predict a correct score, what would you go for?
Probably 1-0 Tottenham, 2-0 Tottenham, something like that.
Yeah. Now let's move on to a match where you do have a selection in, and Crystal Palace, just things are getting worse and worse for them. They've still yet to score a single league goal this season, 0-13 in terms of goal differential, and they travel to Man United on Saturday, and not too many people are expecting them to get a result, and you certainly aren't either, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I mean, to be fair to Crystal Palace, they probably, for the first 40 minutes last week, probably put in the best performance of the season at Man City, and they still came away losing 5-0, which kind of goes to show what their issues are, really. 6 games in now, and they've still not scored a goal. That's obviously not very good. Now Benteke's out injured. They're going to be relying on either a youth teamer or an unknown up front. They tried to sign Carlton Cole, didn't they? But that hasn't materialised. So it's hard to see where they're going to score in this game against a United side that always defensively solid, aren't they? If not spectacular. For me, it's just about how many United win the game by. Yeah, okay. I'm kind of contradicting myself, having not taken Tottenham when they were away in midweek, and now I am taking Man United. But I don't think Palace are going to keep this United front line quiet. You just look at the goals they conceded last week. They were architects of their own downfall. Sacco had an absolute shocker, which is unlike him. And the form that Lukaku, Martial, Rashford, Mkhitaryan, Mata, et al. Are all in, I would imagine they're going to be queuing up to get themselves on the score sheet here. United have already beaten Everton out of sight on this ground this season. And if they want to, they can destroy Palace as well. But I think they'll win by at least 2. That's the Asian handicap line, 2 goals. So the very worst we should be doing is a push here. But if they want to go mental, they could win this anything.
They've been scoring a lot of late goals, haven't they, United? They've been finishing matches really strongly. So, even if it is only 1-0 heading into the last 10 minutes, there's every chance the Bet could still win.
Well, that was the case against Everton, wasn't it? Everton were actually well in the game, 1-0 with 10 minutes to go, and they'd been creating a few chances. And then, one more came along, and they caved in, really. United do tire sides out. They have an awful lot of power and pace going forward. And I think even without Pogba, that should continue. Of course, it should be said that Palace can't use Fosu Mensah in this game because of the ridiculous rule that you can't play against your parent club. And they're also without Loftus-Cheek as well, who's probably been their bright spot of a pretty bang average season so far. So they've got too many problems for my liking, Palace. They're going to get beat. We hope it's by 3 or more.
Yeah, Manchester United -2 Asian handicap. And regarding that rule, I think across Europe it doesn't exist. I know certainly in Holland, for example, when your Ajax and PSV loan their players out, you're definitely allowed to play against your former club. It is a ridiculous rule, isn't it?
Yeah, it shouldn't exist over here either. You shouldn't be allowed to beat your parent club's title rivals and then not beat your parent club. It's all wrong to me, especially with clubs like Chelsea that are loaning out 5.3 million players.
Absolutely. Well, talking of Chelsea, we're going to talk about them next because there's a really big fixture in the evening. Chelsea against Manchester City. Again, it's not a match you have a selection in, but this is such a big contest. I imagine there's going to be a lot of interest in it, a lot of betting interest in it. Chelsea slight favourites on a draw no bet handicap here. Sergio Aguero, that's the big news heading into the match, isn't it? This rib injury he's picked up on the car crash. City are going to miss him badly in this fixture, aren't they?
Yeah, until news broke that Taxi met lamppost, I would probably have been on the overs in this game. I'm not sure I want to be on them without Aguero. I know Jesus is a decent enough player, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of backup behind him. It's interesting to wonder what Conte's going to do here. Obviously, last season, I remember at the Etihad, they counter-attacked City out of sight in that game. Some blinding counter-attacks. But can they really do that in this game? Do they have the personnel to play on the counter-attack now that they've not got no Costa? Morata, he's not really the kind of guy who's going to run in behind too often, is he? So maybe the City backline might have not an easy game, but a more comfortable game than what they had in the 2 games last season. You would imagine City are going to, at some point, find the back of the net. I think their creativity is too much. And the 2 wide players, Sané and Sterling, will have Moses and Chelsea left-back Alonso going the other way far too often. It's an interesting game. Maybe a 1-1 scoreline, something along those lines. Game Chelsea can't lose, I think. And if Chelsea lose this, 6 points, that's a big gap, even this early in the season.
Yeah, 2 renowned tacticians at work here with Guardiola and Conte. Who has the tactical edge, do you think?
Oh, Conte, all day long. All day long. I don't think Guardiola has...
ability.
Yeah, I don't think Guardiola has a second tactic, does he? He just plays on the front foot and hopes that he outscores the opposition. If he doesn't, ouch. All
right, so, thanks for your thoughts on the Premier League. More on Sunday's fixtures in tomorrow's podcast. So now, English League 2 we go to now, and you've got 2 selections in this division. For Saturday, we're going to start in Coventry. Coventry have suddenly found quite a lot of form. Won 4 of the last 5. They're against Crewe on Saturday, and you're going with the home team.
Certainly am, Steve. Yeah, anyone who read my website in midweek will have seen all of Crewe's issues. Struggling for players. They've now lost 4 on the bounce. Actually, I kind of stole one in midweek because they led Wycombe 2-1 quite late in the second half and lost 3-2. But that in itself is a bit of an issue. Wycombe have got plenty of veterans up front, and if they can score late against Crewe, this young and dynamic, or more dynamic, Coventry side certainly will do. They found a little bit of form, Coventry. We should remember that they're still the only side who have beaten Notts County this season. Beat them on the opening day of the season. Notts County have only dropped 2 points since then. So that in itself is a decent form guide. They've won 4 of their last 5 of Coventry, which is a decent effort. They lost at Cambridge, but, that's not necessarily the end of the world. But it's their home form that I'm interested in, Steve. They've won 4 out of their 5 games at home, and they haven't conceded in any of those games. The game that they lost was against Newport. Newport are going well enough to allow Coventry a little bit of slack there. Really do start to worry for Crewe, actually. I've mentioned a couple of times on this podcast that I'm convinced that all that shenanigans with the underage business has really affected the club. And I'm not really seeing anything this season to suggest that it's changed too much. They did have that really good 5-1 win over Chesterfield, but I saw Chesterfield last week, and that's not exactly saying an awful lot. Coventry, for me, at minus 0.75. I think they'll cover it. They're not conceding goals at home. One will get you a half win, but the way Crewe are leaking them, 11 in their last 3 now, more than likely to see more than the odd goal.
This does look a solid selection, I must admit. Again, sometimes these simple picks are the best ones, really, and I think Coventry, there's a lot of things in their favour here. So Coventry minus 0.75, that is your first pick. English League 2 for Saturday. Your second selection, it comes in the Forest Green against Accrington match. Now, you've been strongly on Accrington this year, right from the off. I think you tipped them to win the league, didn't you, on your website? And it will come as no surprise that you are going to be backing them away to Forest Green, who are bottom of the table at the moment. So much for this vegan diet and everything, Kev. It doesn't seem to be working for them right now.
Yeah, I don't know about vegan diet, Steve. They've certainly got a diet of goals going on. They're finding scoring goals very, very difficult. In fact, they've only scored 1 in their last 4 games. That was against Port Vale, who are shipping them quite regularly at the minute. In fact, that was the only time in the last 5 games that they've got so much as a point. They're really struggling at the minute, Forest Green. We had the opportunity to see them on the box last week, didn't we? Those that could stay awake long enough. And they weren't very good. I don't think they're very good. They look out of their depth to me. Mark Cooper's going to have to do some serious business in January if he's going to turn them around. The good thing for him is there's 4 or 5 struggling sides that are going to still be around there with him come January. But the good thing for those that follow my website and, like you say, are on Accrington to win the league, they should be getting 3 points here. They're one of the better away sides, Steve. They've won the last 3 road games. That includes a win at Port Vale on Tuesday night. Not necessarily the easiest place to go on a Tuesday night, to be fair, Port Vale. So that was a really, really good win. They seem to have their confidence back. Accrington, they suffered that defeat at home to Grimsby, didn't they, a few weeks ago? Could have hit the skids after that, but they didn't. They've bounced back again. You know, they've kind of gone to Chesterfield and won. Okay, it was annoying that they were held by Cheltenham last week, but you know they followed that up with a win at Port Vale, and it may just be that the more expansive pitches are suiting them much better than their kind of tight one that they play on. This isn't massively open at Forest Green, but it's open enough. But really and truly, Forest Green just look a poor side right now. Swindon could have had as many as they wanted against them on that Friday night game. They only took 2, but we'll quite happily take 2 here because that'll be more than enough for Accrington to win.
Yeah, you can get Accrington around the even money mark, which looks quite a big price. I actually watched a bit of that Forest Green against Swindon game as well, Kev, and I was nearly physically sick before the game when I saw the food options that were being prepared in the kitchen. The corn pie, it genuinely looked absolutely disgusting. I can't believe fans, accept being served that sort of shite, to be honest, Kev. But I mean, I think it's completely vegan food, isn't it? Get some meat on the menu. That is what my message is. Preferably
by December the 16th, when I have the ignominy of having to go there.
Yes, but anyway, the pick Accrington to win, to beat Forest Green. That's your second pick. Before we move on to other divisions, there's a couple of bigger fixtures in League 2 I want your opinion on. We've got to talk about Notts County. Played 10, won 8, drawn 1, lost just 1. I think that was the opening day of the season or something like you said earlier. They continue to be in brilliant form. They travelled to Mansfield, who were the pre-season favourites to win this division. So a bit of a high-profile fixture. Mansfield so far, well, they've kind of been hit and miss, haven't they? The form's picked up recently, but they're down in 9th. Have they underachieved so far, Kev, do you think?
Mansfield probably have, yeah. I mean, what you've got to remember is that they've had 14 or 15 new players in the summer, so they're going to take time to gel. But even I didn't see Cheltenham 3, Mansfield 0 come in on Tuesday night, I have to admit. Notts County, I mean, what can you say about them? I mean, they're absolutely flying right now. You're right, they lost the opening game of the season. They've only dropped 2 points since then. You look at their last 2 games, absolutely murdered Lincoln. Okay, Lincoln were down to 10 men, but even so, they're a tough side to break down. And then a good 3-0 win at Exeter on Tuesday night. I mean, that's a hell of a statement victory. Okay, it might be that Exeter have kind of shot their load sort of thing. We'll only really know that sort of this weekend and next perhaps, but certainly can't argue with the way Notts County are going at the moment. Kevin Nolan's just signed a new contract to be in charge for I think another 3 years, and obviously he's got some of his powers from his time at Bolton, Newcastle and West Ham down there helping him out. I mean, you look at their front two, Shola Amiobi and John Stead, it's a front two that shouldn't be in League Two even at their age right now, and they've got some experience at the back and in the centre of the park, so they're a genuine side, Notts County. I've got a funny feeling they might even win this actually, but obviously we've got to appreciate that it's a derby atmosphere. I would imagine Evans will have the crowd riled up for this. It's hard to go and play at Mansfield, or hard to go and play any Steve Evans side really. There's no room around his gut, and also, of course, you have the issue of him and his assistant trying their hardest to referee the game. But Kevin Nolan's probably no stranger to doing that himself. Be a tough game to referee, I would imagine. If you pushed me into a selection, I wouldn't be surprised if Notts County win the game. I'm not convinced Mansfield are completely all that. But you've got to appreciate there's a fair bit of draw potential, particularly with Mansfield having drawn 4 of their 10 games thus far.
Yeah, Notts County on a plus 0.25 handicap. You'd say those odds are about fair for this fixture.
Yeah, I would say so. I think there's an awful strong chance you'd only be winning half, but hey, a half win's better than a full loss.
Yeah. Now, the second match I want to talk to you about is your own team, Luton Town, against Newport. And you guys are kind of stalking the leaders, aren't you, at the moment? In the 5th position, Newport are in 7th, perhaps doing a little bit better than people expect. What are you anticipating at Kenilworth Road tomorrow?
Yeah, they're doing an awful lot better than I expected, I must admit. Going into the season, while I thought they would be improvers on last season, possibly because they couldn't have got an awful lot worse, I didn't expect them to be 7th. If you told me at the start of the season that when Newport went to Luton, they were going to be 7th in the table, knowing full well that they're not going until the end of September, I'd have ordered you a doctor. But no credit where it's due. They're obviously playing some good football. They've actually got 2 strikers in Frank Nubel and Padraig Amond, who really good strikers for this division. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see either of those 2 around the top scorers come the end of the season. Amond obviously scored a barrel load of goals to get Grimsby promoted a couple of seasons ago from the conference. So when he gets his scoring form going, he'll go well. But you've got to respect Luton, haven't you? Even allowing for the fact that I support them. 5 clean sheets in 10, would have been 6 had it not been for a pesky rascal from Barnet pinging one in from 25 yards in injury time. So they're defending well. I guess on the flip side, although it looks good that they've scored 18 goals in 10 games, you've got to remember that 8 of those came on the opening day of the season. So they've only scored 10 in their last 9. That would be an issue. They've got plenty of suspended midfielders for this game as well of Luton. Tragically, really, Pelly Ruddock got sent off against Chesterfield last weekend. Never is sending off in a month of Sundays. But unfortunately, he's got a 3-match ban. Luke Berry got a 3-match ban in the aftermath of the Wickham game for breathing on someone, I think. And Luton paid the price in midweek when they couldn't find the back of the net, maybe due to a lack of creativity. I would imagine Luton will win, Steve. Newport have never won at Kenilworth Road. I'm hoping that will continue. Generally, home side does best in this game because I can't remember Luton playing well at Newport. Our recent record there's pathetic. Hopefully, we can get one over on them on Saturday. But it's not a betting game, not unless you want to risk the unders. But if you do, you've got to prepare for the fact that Luton Strike Force is the best in the league, and it will click at some point.
Yeah, it looks an interesting fixture. You were close to the even money market, which might tempt a few people. But, I guess Newport are a bit of a surprise package at the minute. You never know, do you? But I would agree with you. I think Luton will probably win this one, maybe with a clean sheet as well. Certainly do have a habit of keeping it tight at the back, that's for sure. Well, thanks very much for your thoughts on English League Two as ever, Kev.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. Let's head across into Europe then. Let's get your thoughts on some matches. We'll go to Norway first of all. I think there's one game on Saturday, which is important to the people of Oslo, as Stabæk host Vålerenga. You haven't got a pick on the game, but for those that do follow the league or want to include the match in an accumulator or something like that, who would have the edge, if anyone?
Well, I would give Stabæk the edge, and I would give the overs the edge if I had to have any bets in the game. But I don't know what it is about derby matches. I think you just talked about it really in the Mansfield-Notts County fixture. Sort of anything can happen. There's always that draw potential, isn't there? Like a 1-1, which could, or even a 2-2, which can cock you up. The form book almost has to go out the window, doesn't it? Vålerenga have not been very good in the last few weeks at all. In fact, they've not been very good all season. Had they not won last week, they'd be in the relegation zone right now, which is quite shocking for a team as big as them, who wanted to challenge for the title this season. The ex-Celtic manager, Ronny Deila, it just isn't working. His system is not working at the moment. He hasn't got the right sort of players. It's a longer-term project, but I've not been impressed with them. Maybe that win last week can give them some confidence. Stabæk have lost their last 2 now in a row. It seems the goals have dried up a little bit. Owe Onwoy-Wanfa missed a penalty last week. So his confidence maybe is a little bit down. But I do think Stabæk are the better team. If their key players get going like Lamanza and Owe Onwoy-Wanfa, then they've got the edge. But I think the bookies are just about right, you know, with all their lines for this game. Could be a decent one to watch if you've not got anything to stream about 5 o'clock in the evening there. But yeah, I think it's a no-bet fixture, Kev, reluctantly.
Fair enough. We'll visit that league again in Sunday's podcast, I'm sure. Let's head across to France then. Busy night in the top flight there. Six matches. You've got bets in 3 of them. But before we go into those, I want to quickly chat about the big match, which is the early game, PSG against Bordeaux. Obviously, Monaco missed out on the chance to overtake PSG in the table on Friday night when they conceded late on. Do we expect PSG to pull away with a win?
Yeah, it's the battle between the 2 remaining unbeaten teams in the league as Bordeaux travel here. The big question is how legitimate are Bordeaux? They've played well, but I feel like a lot of factors have gone their way. I think they've had 1 injury all season, which is quite remarkable. No suspensions yet either. They're keeping a really settled team for the first time in many a year, which is helping them. But their fixture list hasn't been difficult. They've faced a lot of crap teams, really. I think the only form guide you can go on is they did manage a 3-3 draw at Lyon, but that was 2 late goals got on a draw in there. How much has Wednesday night took out of PSG? I mean, you felt that was a big statement game, didn't you? Beating Bayern Munich 3-0. As poor as Bayern are right now. I mean, last week they didn't have Neymar and they struggled with him. He's a big player. It's simple as that. I couldn't believe how much different they were without him. He's such a massive player already for PSG. So if he's in the mood, isn't he? Can Bordeaux cope with him? Well, no. I mean, they're not going to be able to keep a clean sheet in Paris, are they? So they need to fight fire with fire. They need to do what Lyon did and actually attack them. I think teams that are going to attack PSG this year will have the best success. But luckily for Bordeaux, they do have some pacey strikers like Camano. Malcolm, he's a Brazilian. Really keep your eye on him. He will end up at a big club, Kev, somewhere down the line, probably Premier League. I could see him this time next season. Definitely a player to keep your eye on. Great technical skill. I'd love to see Bordeaux get a result here, but I think the bookies have got the lines about right. Minus 2.25 handicap. The goal line's 3.5. I mean, probably the most likely score is something like 3-1. But yeah, it's not a betting match again. Nothing really tempts me here.
Fair enough. If the referee of that match does happen to be listening to this game, please give a penalty so that we can get that ridiculous charade between Neymar and Cavani going again. It's died down a little bit too much for my liking. We'll move on to the games that you have got a bet in. Now, Lille took an absolute beating by the aforementioned Monaco last week, didn't they? And you're expecting them to get beaten again?
Well, I think Lille are the most overrated team in Liga right now. It's simple as that. They're in the bottom 3, so you might say, how can they be overrated? Well, the simple fact is each week the bookies price them up much shorter than they should be, based on reputation. And I was wondering what was going on because Marcelo Bielsa's taken over at the start of the season and a lot was expected of them. I think the Racing Post, didn't they tip them in the top 3? I think someone was telling me. But actually looking at the squad in detail, it's not that great. It's only sort of middle of the road, really, in terms of ability. And this is a tough fixture because they're going to newly promoted side Amiens, who are going to fight really, really hard. I suppose they're the equivalent of Huddersfield, you know, in the Premier League terms. They're minnows. No one really expects them to do anything, you know, going down hot favourites. But I think they've reinforced well in the squad. They're playing decent football. They beat Nice 3-0 not too long ago, which is a great result. They've faced some tough teams already, like PSG, Saint Etienne. And, they only lost 2-0 against Marseille and PSG, which isn't too bad. Last week they would have drawn, but for a penalty awarded against them, which was never a penalty. If it had been awarded against Luton, Kev, you'd have been escorted from the ground. It was such a shocking decision. So, yeah, I think Amiens are going to be hard to beat here. You can get them drawn over bet at 2.15. I don't think they'll lose to Lille. They look a complete mess to me at the moment. All the confidence is with Amiens. There's going to be a partisan crowd. And once again, I think they're going to be a bit underrated. And Lille are definitely being overrated here. It's probably more a fade of them than anything. But nice bit of value on Amiens here, Kev.
Yeah, we like value. You're sticking to the bottom end of the league for your next two bets. Dijon, who quite clearly haven't been mustered so far this season, host Strasbourg. But you've got a funny feeling this is the game that they break out.
Well, they haven't been mustered, but again, they're another team that have probably faced some tough opponents, really. So I think I'm willing to let them off a little bit. I was really impressed with how they played at Lyon last week. They went there, drew 3-3, and took the attack to Lyon brilliantly. And Dijon have got some good attacking players. They've got a coach who naturally wants to attack as well. So I think they're a better team than Strasbourg right now. Haven't really adapted to life in league very well since their promotion. They've lost 4 in a row. Their confidence is a bit down. Generally struggling to score goals as well. And this match is one of those where my theory of sort of two poorer teams facing each other will fancy their chances of winning. I don't think Dijon are necessarily that poor, but they are in terms of league position right now. But both should fancy winning this fixture. They'll look at it and think, yeah, we can get 3 points here. So it should maybe lead to an open game of football. So my first pick is over 2.25 goals. I think there should be at least 2, very worst case scenario here. But I'm also going to take Dijon on a quarter ball handicap, minus a quarter. They just, at the moment, they feel like the better outfit to me. If they play like they did against Lyon, then I think they'll have too much for Strasbourg, to be honest with you. But this could be a high-scoring contest. So maybe something like a 3-2 maybe on the cards. I think both teams can kind of come out of their shell a little bit. Certainly Strasbourg can have a go. I'll be more confident in the over, actually, than Dijon, because Dijon do have a habit of making defensive mistakes. But I'm happy to stake on both picks. 2-1 win. Both will win.
Lovely. And there's one more bet to come, and I'm interested in hearing your logic behind this one, because it includes a Caen side who either win or lose, but they don't do it by very many, judging by the fact there's only been 10 goals in their 7 games so far. But you're expecting goals when they travel to Rennes.
Yeah, fair to say this is not a statistical pick, Kev. I was looking myself, actually, at I think they've only had 1 over match so far, Caen, this season, which surprised me because they do have an attacking-minded coach as well, who's been there many a year. He likes to be on the front foot. But then I looked at the fixture list, and I can understand why. They face a lot of defensive teams like Saint-Etienne, Montpellier, Nantes, who are really boring. Metz are hardly scoring a goal. Lille, again, they're struggling. The one game which did end over was against Dijon, and that was a really open affair, end-to-end football. So I just don't think they've faced the right opponent so far, but this should hopefully be an open fixture. Rennes have been scoring in some high-scoring fixtures this year. Just 1 under for them. Christian Gourcuff plays 4-4-2, or sort of an adaptation of that formation. Either way, he likes to start with a couple of strikers whenever he can. And it just looks like another over to me, over 2.25. Get good odds as well, close to the even money mark. So I think this is the match where Caen finally open out again. They're going to get the right sort of opponent to play against, their natural style. I don't think this will be a low-scoring contest, Kev. I don't know who's going to win the game. Rennes look a bit short. They're about 1.80. I wouldn't back them. It could be something like a 2-2 draw, maybe. But I do like the over 2.25. You could even back over 2 at a shorter price if you wanted to be safe. But yeah, I'm not looking at the actual statistics. I'm more looking at the style of the teams regarding this pick.
Yeah, I'm more a styles man than statistics when it comes to that particular market. So absolutely. No problem with that. We'll cover Sunday's 3 games, funnily enough, in Sunday's pod. So let's move across to the MLS. We're heading towards the end of the regular season. So there's plenty of big matches on show on Saturday. For those of you that listen to us in the UK, there's a double header on Sky. We'll cover those matches in a moment. But first of all, Steve's first bet comes in the first game of the night, A 9 p.m. kickoff, again UK time, 10 o'clock Central European time. It features an Orlando City side who absolutely wiped the floor with New England in midweek. They host a Dallas side who, well, Stone the Crows. They finally won a game of football, Steve.
Yeah, the match obviously means a lot more to Dallas because they are right in the mixer to make the playoffs. I think Orlando, they're gone really, let's be honest. Even if they won their last three, I think probably the Red Bulls would get ahead of them in points. But Orlando are ending the season well, aren't they? That draw in Atlanta, I mean, that's the best anyone's played against Atlanta recently. So I think that result makes them look pretty good to me. That hammering against New England, they also beat DC United away from home not too long ago. So I think they're enjoying the football at the end of the season. No pressure on them. Orlando, ever since they come in the league, their main thing has been about entertaining their fans down there, hasn't it? Everything's been about the supporters. This new stadium, looks a great one, doesn't it? And it's all about goals. There's no reason for them to be defensive or anything here. And there's no reason for Dallas to be either. They're a naturally offensive team, and they've been making far too many defensive mistakes this year. Yeah, they kept a clean sheet in midweek, but I think, many a team can keep a clean sheet against Colorado Rapids, can't they? I wouldn't look into that one too much. Just screams of an over to me, this one, over 2.75. In fact, you can get that at 1.84, which looks generous. I don't know who's going to win. I hope Dallas do, because I think the playoffs would be better for them if Dallas made the playoffs. But, if I had to side with someone, I've got to be honest, I would probably side with Orlando. They're just playing the better football at the moment. But hopefully there's at least 3 goals, but I can see them being a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Don't fall into the trap that just because Dallas have to win, it means they will win. Not necessarily always the case in football. Sometimes playing without pressure, with a bit of freedom, can work well. And Orlando City certainly testified to that after that win in midweek. There's 10 games in the MLS on Saturday night. We're going to bring you 6 bets here. We'll quickly jump to Steve's next one. We've crossed midnight now, Steve, but Columbus Crew host DC United. Now, every time I bet in a DC United game, you can bet your bottom dollar Hamid as an absolute blinder, but you're prepared to take him on.
Yeah, I am. This is a pretty simple selection. Columbus Crew -1 Asian handicap. Simple fact is that they've had the whole week off. They're at home where they're really good. DC United had that epic 3-3 draw in midweek against Red Bulls, which I think was kind of their Everest really for this week. I mean, it's a big rival for them. They've really enjoyed playing spoiler in that one, equalising late on. I just don't know what's going to be left in their tank, Kev, especially as they're not usually very good away from home. Columbus Crew, they can secure a playoff spot with victory here. I expect them to do it with plenty in hand. And there's not really an awful lot else to say. You could look at the overs, but if DC United throw in a stinker, which they probably due one, aren't they now, after a couple of good performances, then you'd need Columbus to score all the goals yourself. So I think Columbus Crew -1 Asian. I think they're going to win the game. I mean, unless Hamid has an absolute blinder. But even then, I think they're going to be under so much pressure throughout the whole 90 minutes. He can't keep them out. So, Columbus Crew -1 Asian handicap. Let's move to the Toronto FC match against New York Red Bulls. You've got a selection in this one. Who are you going with?
I have, Steve. Yeah, this is the first of the 2 games that I mentioned that are live on Sky for those of us in the UK. I'm going with goals, Steve. All things being equal, Josie Altidore is going to be back for Toronto in this game. There's talk that Giovinco could be back, but why they'd risk him before the playoffs, I've no idea. They've near enough got the Supporters' Shield secured, haven't they? Even allowing for the fact that they've lost their last 2 games. But you look at those last 2 games, well, that Montreal game was an absolute freak of all freaks. And they lost in New England last week, didn't they? Both games contained 3 goals, or in the case of that Montreal game, 8 goals. New York Red Bulls, you just highlighted their midweek match, 3 each at home to DC United. Really surprising. That comes hot off the heels off of a 3-2 in Columbus last weekend. And they've got their players back, haven't they? In particular, they've got Royer back. New York Red Bulls. They play this ridiculously weird formation, but it might just actually work against Toronto, who are usually defensively sound, but maybe that weird and wacky formation that the Red Bulls employ will get players in between the lines, just like Montreal did. They went there with a front 3, didn't they? Piatti had an absolute field day that night, as did Jackson, what's-his-face up front. I can see Bradley Wright Phillips and Royer kind of doing the same thing here, particularly if Toronto have just eased off ahead of the playoffs. Really, really like the goals in this game, Steve. I think they played out of 3 each last year. Maybe that'll be the result this year, but I think there'll be more than 3 goals.
Yeah, I have to say, I think any team that seems to attack Toronto has some success. And it's like when Montreal hit them, they just weren't used to anyone attacking them. Teams have been giving them too much respect. But Red Bulls, they never go anywhere with a defensive strategy, do they? So, yeah, I think you're probably onto something here with the overs. It could be a really high-scoring contest. Don't rule out another 3-all draw, 2-all could be on the cards as well. It could be a frantic sort of fixture. And you're going with goals again in the New England against Atlanta match, aren't you?
Yeah, I most certainly am in this one, Steve. New England, for them, they're in the same situation as Orlando, aren't they? They can win out. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. But this became a bigger game for them than it might have done at any other point in the season when they went to Atlanta and took the mother of all hidings. So it's all about revenge for New England. And I would imagine they don't just want revenge, but they want a sizable piece of revenge as well. 7-0 they lost that night. To be fair, they did well to score 0, and they also did well to only concede 7. Atlanta were on fire that night, as they have been, for the last 6 weeks. Their home ground must have some sort of ring fence around it because the opposition can't seem to play there. It's quite amazing. On the road, it's a different story for Atlanta, though, isn't it? They're nothing like as sure, but they do score goals. They concede an awful lot more. And I just see this one being very, very, very high scoring.
Yeah, it's an over 3 bet again. And obviously, New England don't have Jay Heaps in charge anymore. He was given the sack after recent shellackings. I mean, this could go either way. It wouldn't even surprise me if New England actually won the fixture. But if Atlanta took the 3 points as well, could go either way. Looks a really open sort of fixture. And I'm going to stick with goals as a theme. Houston Dynamo against Minnesota. I mean, I watched Houston against LA Galaxy midweek, and it was one of the most ridiculously frantic matches I've ever seen for a long, long time. It could have been about 5-all, Houston missed so many chances. Galaxy missed a few as well. And I see this being a really open... the Dynamo need to win matches first and foremost. That's what we've got to say. They're outside the playoffs at the moment. But they've got problems defensively. Thankfully, their mojo returned in attacking midweek. Minnesota, they're a bit like Orlando at the moment. They love playing spoiler, don't they? They're playing with no pressure on their shoulders. There's a good feeling around the club, even though they're not going to be in the playoffs. They're going to finish outside the bottom 2 in the Western Conference, which is a fantastic return for them after the start of the season they had. They're just going for it. They're not interested in keep going for 0-0s like Colorado are. They're playing nice attacking football. I think this first fixture ended 2-all, where Houston blew a 2-0 lead, and I think this clash of style should generate a lot of goals, shouldn't it? Really, 3.25 is quite a steep goal line, but I'm willing to take the overs here. It just screams goals to me, Kev.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't disagree. I was on Houston that night, so that 2-2 was a bit of a pain in the backside, to say the least. Quite like Houston's record this season, actually, Steve. Played 30, won 10, drawn 10, lost 10. Can't argue that they're not consistent. They haven't won for an awful long while, have they? Like you say, they really have to win this. 2 places left in the Western Conference playoffs and 4 teams fighting for it. And as we think, Dallas may well come out all guns blazing. Really big game for Houston Dynamo. It'd be interesting to see how this one goes. If they score first, if they can hold on. If they don't, as we saw in midweek, they're going to have to put their colours to the mast and go crazy. You've got one more bet in this division, which again relies on goals, and the aforementioned Los Angeles Galaxy. Now, they're terrible right now, and they're taking on a real Salt Lake side who, probably with the exception of Atlanta, are the form side in MLS right now. Does that mean you're going for an away win?
Well, you know what, I'm tempted, because when Galaxy give up, they're terrible, aren't they? I mean, again, that Houston match of midweek, they were 2-0 up, but it could. I mean, they should have been pegged back to 2-all. I don't know how it didn't go 2-all in that particular fixture. Even then, they nearly blew a 3-1 advantage. Houston weren't far away from winning it in stoppage time. The Galaxy, one thing they do have to do is entertain their fans, though, Kev. They don't want to be booed all the time, do they? They want to put on a show for their fans here. And there's no reason to play out like a low-scoring, tight contest. Ziggy Schmidt is usually quite an offensive manager. I think there'll be goals in this one as well, especially as Real Salt Lake have found their scoring boots recently. Mostly at home, it must be said, but the confidence in Real Salt Lake right now, I think they're a bit of a team under the radar. Absolutely nobody is talking about Real Salt Lake as a contender for MLS Cup honours this season. And I mean, you can see why in a way, because on paper they just haven't got the quality compared to other teams. But yeah, they're in 5th place. At the minute, they're in as good a form as anyone. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if they win this fixture. I prefer to take the goals myself over 2.75 because I just think it'll be a frantic affair. Recent fixtures between these two teams has been ridiculous. It was 6-2 the last time they met, actually. And I think the clash of style should generate goals. LA Galaxy are defending abysmally right now. I mean, goodness me, they don't care. So, yeah, Real Salt Lake should fill their boots, but the Galaxy will get the chances as well. So, I mean, I like the overs here. I know you were tempted by Real Salt Lake on the handicap, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I hope there's a little bit of a drift on the Salt Lake, actually. If I can get a little bit bigger, then I would take them. Galaxy have given up 3 each against Houston in midweek. Does nothing to sway me of that. I'm absolutely convinced that they've given up. And if anything, that midweek draw is only further going to make them give up, because even when they're in a great position, they couldn't win a game of football. And, with only 2 or 3 games left for them, there isn't really an awful lot for them to play for. So they're one side that I will not take, even though they're playing with freedom. That's one game that I think the pressure will tell in. We've got a few more games to quickly discuss, Stephen. They're all conference clashes. And we'll go with Chicago Fire against New York City. Big game that, because if Chicago Fire win, they go within a point of New York City, and they could yet finish second, which of course will give them the bye in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the overs here. I looked at Chicago here. But what is it about New York City away from home under Patrick Vieira? They just seem to have this fantastic away record. Really always a high percentage of victories on the road. And that is what puts me off back in Chicago in this particular fixture. And, midweek, I think they only won 1-0 in Montreal. And that just sums up New York City, doesn't it, sometimes, where you feel the match is going to be wide open, full of goals, and they eke out a sneaky 1-0 or 2-0. Could that happen here again? I think there's a couple of injury doubts for the Fire. But they roared back to form, didn't they, midweek? So, I don't know here. I mean, no result would surprise me, but I suppose from Chicago's point of view, if they want to get second place, they've got to win, haven't they? They can't settle for a draw because, I mean, they're 4 points clear of Columbus, so you would hope from their point of view they can at least finish 3rd or 4th. But, I mean, how do you see it going? I don't know. Maybe 2-1 if I had to stick my neck out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight game. New York City, that was a weird 1-0 in midweek, wasn't it? They must have had about 50 chances, and I'm not even exaggerating. They just kept on hitting the goalkeeper with each and every single one of them. It was absolute madness. I don't think the Fire will be as bad as Montreal were. But if Chicago score, will they just try and hold on to it? An interesting game, one of the more interesting games. I can't pick it, I have to say.
There's a retirement I think we have to talk about, Kev, here, with the Colorado Rapids against Montreal Impact match. Kevin Doyle, he's hung up his boots. He's said that every time he heads the ball now, he gets a headache. So he's retired, interestingly enough. I mean...
which is ironic, because every time he heads the ball when I'm on Colorado, it gives me a headache. So it's a bit of a shame, that, actually. And that is a serious issue that the MLS need to look into, isn't it?
Well, I think it is a shame that someone's retiring because of that. And I know this is an issue being looked at across world football, isn't it? That there's more to this than meets the eye. Yeah,
something needs to be done. There needs to be a concussion protocol. One thing that the NFL do absolutely right is their concussion protocol. There's no reason why in football an extra sub can't be used to allow someone to go off and be checked for concussion. And if they're fine, then they can come back on. If they can't, then that substitution takes place. Player safety needs to be paramount to that. It really does. And you've only got to look at that savage hit in the NFL game in midweek to see just how important all sportsmen's safety is, let alone footballers who, like you say, they relentlessly head a football and it can't do them no good.
No, it can't. And I just wonder, I mean, I know he's been injured recently anyway, but will that have an effect on the dressing room, do you think? When someone retires because of that reason? It's a bizarre timing of it. But
I think if they had something to play for, they might have given it a let's do it for Doyle mentality. But the fact that they're not playing for anything kind of makes you wonder, really. If anything, it might make them go the other way. But, I mean, Montreal aren't really playing for anything now, are they? I think their chances of making the playoffs went in midweek. Tricky game to call, that one.
That's the
interesting to see how Colorado play, though. Absolutely. There's a couple of other. I agree with that. There's a couple of other Western Conference clashes that are absolutely huge to the impact of the playoffs. We've got the battle between third and first when Sporting Kansas City host Vancouver Whitecaps. This is the second game on Sky for those of us in the UK. Now then, there's 1 point separating the top four in this Western Conference. And obviously, whoever wins these matches will have a significant chance of topping the table. But maybe Sporting Kansas City have got the best chance of all, given that they've got games in hand of everyone around them.
Yeah, I think Vancouver are a bit underrated here, Kev. You know, they're really too short, Sporting Kansas City. I still don't know long term if they're going to get the goals, you know, to propel them in the playoffs. Losing Dom Dwyer, for me, is still a stupid decision. He's firing goals in left, right and centre for Orlando right now. But SKC continue to miss too many chances. Luckily, they faced some crap teams like Galaxy, New England Revolution recently. And obviously they won the US Open Cup, which is a great positive for them. But I just feel Vancouver are a bit underrated here. Robinson's got them, he rotates all the time. I mean, you couldn't predict their 11. But, I mean, they lost 3-0 in midweek, but that doesn't worry me too much because you just know that he's going to refresh the squad up a bit and they are good on the counter-attack. So sooner or later, the lack of quality finishing will impact Sporting Kansas City, I think, Kev. So I think I could see this being a draw, maybe 1-1.
Yeah, I can as well. I think, to be fair, given that they've both got games in hand of the Timbers and the Sounders, a draw wouldn't necessarily be the worst result for them. We talk about big matches in the West. Might not actually come any bigger than the last game that we're going to cover, San Jose Earthquakes against Portland Timbers. Timbers are second at the moment, but as I've said, everyone else has played fewer games around them. But a win will take them top of the table if Vancouver don't beat Sporting Kansas City. But it's more for the Earthquakes that this is a huge game. They're 2 points adrift of Dallas, who are in sixth, and they've played a game more. If they've got any aspirations of making the playoffs, this quite simply is must win. But can you really make the playoffs with a minus 23 goal difference?
No, and they won't make the playoffs. It's too late for them. There's no way they're going to get ahead of a couple of teams like Real Salt Lake and Dallas and Houston, in my opinion. They blew it midweek, didn't they, by losing 4-1 at home to Chicago. And the weekend before that, you can't lose 4-0 against DC United, can you? I mean, goodness me. Yeah, for me, they're out of it, and I wonder if their heads might go now. They could probably lose maybe all their remaining games. Simple as that. Timbers, they didn't play midweek, so they've got a whole week of freshness as an advantage in this particular fixture as well. I think the Timbers will win, but I can't be backing them away from home. I never have been a man for backing them away from home for 2 years now. They're too unreliable, aren't they? So I've got a good feeling about Portland. My personal opinion is it will be them or Seattle that are going to represent the West in the MLS Cup final. Just feel like they're going along nicely. They're not peaking too much, but they're not troughing too much either. You know, nice sort of blend of results going in there. They're playing good enough football. So, yeah, if I had to stick my money on someone, it certainly would be Portland Timbers. But, you know, just this away from home, I can never fully trust them, Kev.
No, which is fair enough. I mean, you look at San Jose's last 4 matches. They've lost 3 of them. They conceded 4 goals in each and every one. It's worrying trend for fans of San Jose. I guess really and truly, it should be flagged up that the best bet in that game might be Diego Valeri to score any time. He's done it in the last 10 games. Why is he not going to do it in an 11th?
It's mad, isn't it? This run that he's been going on. He's been just scoring left, right and centre. And, I mean, it bodes well, doesn't it? I think Fernando Adi's coming back for the Timbers very soon as well. So, yeah, I mean, the more you think about it, the more of a case it is for the Timbers, really, to win this game.
Yeah, they're another one, Steve. Just like Salt Lake. I've not yet written up my preview for Saturday's matches on my website, but I can see by the time I get round to it, I'll have itchy fingers, and I might end up back in the Timbers. I think they have to win this game, Portland, if they want to be in the top two, and I think they'll do that. I think they're improving away from home. You're right to have reservations about them, but they won at New York City the other week, didn't they? And it's never easy to go to the Yankee Stadium, especially when it's pissing down the rain like it was that night. And they got a point in Seattle in that derby game, which they should really have got all three in. So I think they're improving on the road. I can see me being tempted on them.
I'm not a man for backing away teams in MLS, but you could probably do worse than like a fourfold of draw no bets on the night. Maybe sort of Vancouver, along with the Portland Timbers, Real Salt Lake, and Atlanta. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad fourfold if you're after a sort of an away accumulator. We are at the stage of the season now where you do have to look at motivation a bit as well. So, yeah, I mean, teams that like San Jose, the Heads, I just wonder what position they're in. It just looks to me like they've blown it. I know they're not out of it officially, but they can only get, 3 more games left for them. Dallas and Houston have got 4 left. Real Salt Lake are playing well. If I'm in that camp, I'm really starting to wonder if we're going to make the playoffs now. So, yeah, I think... well, that's all the games, isn't it? We've been talked about, Kev. So hope all the listeners enjoyed the analysis we provided. Got plenty of selections for Saturday, and let's hope we go well.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. Yeah, like you say, plenty of picks. I think just running through it off the top of my head, 13 picks there, and we've covered plenty more matches besides. So hopefully we've given you plenty of insights. We'll be back again to do likewise with the many matches that there are in the divisions that we cover on Sunday. Thanks for your thoughts, Steve. Like you say, all the best with all of those picks, and we'll return for more on Sunday.
Looking forward to it. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on Sunday. Goodbye.